Is he playing better? Is he running more? Is Jaden Mayava, is he still trending up, or is he actually now really stuck in neutral? We're going to talk about that on this episode of Locked On USC. Got some recruiting news, and also, is there a groundswell of momentum shifting for Lincoln Riley? It's coming up on this episode of Locked On USC.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Culkin, and thanks for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. You know the routine, whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you want to download this podcast, you can pick the platform. This show's always free. This show always appreciates your support. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, if you can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets, and you can use it across the entire FanDuel app. Download the app today. All right, so let's talk about Jaden Mayava. After he threw his second interception against Notre Dame, we can now run his interception numbers up to 4 during the last 2 games he's played against the Fighting Irish. It's not a good number. As far as this year versus last year's picks, he had 2 against Notre Dame last year at the Coliseum. Those went for pick 6. Didn't happen this time on the road. So baby steps growth, right? And I'm not picking on Jaden. I'm just kind of setting things up here a little bit. The reason I'm pointing out how those stats is it was just a few weeks ago when I literally talked about how I was all in with his play. I had, bought in, I saw better decision making, making the right throws, not doing dumb things for all intents and purposes. And I said that before the Michigan game. So it's not like I jumped on that bandwagon after Michigan. But in his last 3 games, right, we're talking about Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame. 2 of those games on the road, 1 at home. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, which, that's 2 per game. I think most would think that 3 per game is probably the bar to meet, considering all the athletes he has on the outside to throw the ball to, including his tight ends. And, when I talk about the athletes, this isn't me making this assumption. This is Jaden Maiava. He talked about it after practice. So, he's thrown at least 1 interception in the last 3 games. You got Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, where he threw 2. The other day after practice, Jaden was asked, why aren't you running as much? I know my everyday listeners here at Locked On USC, everyone's been wondering, how come Jaden's not using his athleticism to escape, take off and run? Why aren't there any designed runs? Well, he was asked after practice, why aren't you running as much? That was the question. And at first he was like, what do you mean? He had that, what you talk about, Willis look on his face. He goes, because I feel like I'm running more. And then eventually he settled in. He said, we got guys that are better athletes that we, that's what we have them for. Get the ball in the playmakers and get the ball to the playmakers in space. That's the biggest thing to me, end quote. No one is going to argue that USC has playmakers all over the field. Jacoby Lane, Makai Lemon, Walker Lyons, Lake McCree. They did lose 2 of their better athletes, Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, running backs. They're out. Eli for the season. Maybe Waymo will be back at the end. We'll see. But the opponents know that as well. They understand who USC is putting on the field that makes them dangerous on offense. But sometimes those best laid plans, they don't always work out. So sometimes Makai Lemon, sometimes Jacoby Lane, they're not going to be open. Sometimes they're not open, which means Jaden sometimes has to take what the defense is giving. Go pick up that positive yardage. Use your legs. Going back to this Notre Dame game, I can think of at least 5 different occasions. At least 5. when the field was wide open, but he chose to, just kind of wait it out. He wanted to let those athletes that he has running the routes come open. Sometimes you're giving up yards waiting. And, a couple of those, maybe 2 or 3, probably could have picked up the first down and more. And I'm not even talking about those aren't even designed runs. Those aren't designed run calls. Those are just kind of like, all right, like I said, the best laid plans. We know what the play call was. You got 3 guys out there running routes. They're dropping 7 or 8. That's usually a key to, hey, run the ball, right? A lot of green grass. Take advantage of it. But where are those design run calls? I don't know. What will we see from Lincoln when USC arrives in Lincoln, Nebraska? Will the play calling change a little bit? Brian Jackson, King Miller, those are your running backs, top 2 guys. Like I mentioned, Waymo won't be there. Eli is done for the year. You got Harry Dalton, you got Riley Wormley, who are available. Harry got into the game against Notre Dame, ran into the back of somebody, and I think that was it for his touches. Could be wrong. I have to go back and look at the snap counts. But Jayden has to be a threat in the run game right now. I mean, plain and simple. He doesn't have to carry it 10 times, but he has to be a threat. The other team has to respect the idea that, you know what? One of these times where he's on that read, he's going to keep it. And he's going to go around the end. Or maybe just right up the gut. But it has to be a play call. You have to do it. I mean, when you roll Jayden out on 4th and short, use your legs instead of trying to throw the ball to Lake McCree, especially when you're going east-west. We know, as great of an athlete as he is, his knees have suffered a lot. It's not easy to go from east to west, north, all of a sudden to turn north. The body sometimes breaks down. I'm not saying he's not capable of doing it, but it's slow developing. Whereas, just a little pump fake to Lake is going to freeze the defender, and boom, it gives you the advantage right away to pick up that short yardage. But this is a huge road game, massive road game. It's coming up after the bye week, and the run game is not going to be at 100%. And when I say at 100%, I mean with your top 2 guys, Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders. So more of the load, ironically, is going to fall on Jayden's shoulders when you need him to use his legs a little bit more. So yeah, I guess Jayden was kind of surprised by the question a little bit. He says, well, I feel like I'm running more. Well, yeah, but not out of necessity. It's more out of necessity because you're being chased. Maybe that's what's stuck in his head. I don't know. I don't think these are design runs or, anything of that nature where he's doing it to pick up, move the sticks. He does. He's done it on occasion this year, but against Notre Dame, not nearly enough. It wasn't part of the game plan for whatever reason. And I don't think they were trying to protect Jayden because they're missing Waymo and because they're missing Sanders. You can't afford to lose your starting quarterback. We all know what happens when they bring Husan Longstreet into the game. If you're not even going to use him as a threat to throw the ball, if you're going to bring him in, you got to get more creative. But if you're going to bring Husan in to run the ball, use Jayden in that same capacity because he is a threat to throw the ball. All right, so I think in order for Jayden to elevate his game, he's got to stay more grounded, right? He talks about staying in neutral, not allowing one play to affect the next play. That's great. I just hope he hasn't, plateaued. I need him to understand, well, not me, the team, everybody wants Jayden to be the best quarterback possible. And I just think he's being limited by not running the ball. Whether, again, I don't know if it's by design or not, but he needs to do it, especially when the defense is inviting you to do it. You got to take what's there. If the defense is flooding the zone, There's, you know what? Take off, run, go pick up 4, 5, 6 yards. Maybe you may make a defender miss and it all of a sudden turns into an explosive play. Seen it happen. I'd like to see it happen again. Love to see it on the road at Nebraska. Got to win that game. That's in a couple weeks. They're still in the bye week right now. All right, next segment. Since we're talking about play calling a little bit, sort of, a lot, talk about that in the next segment. Seems to be a little bit of a groundswell. I'll tell you who else is talking about Lincoln Riley and play calling, and maybe it's time to give it up. That's coming up next. And I got some recruiting news too coming up. So you'll want to stick around for that. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is called Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters, because every missed call is literally you leaving money on the table. You can't do that. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo was the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone. Do it on your computer as well. So literally, there's no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or you're part of a larger team, Quo will make it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And you're going to get 20% off your first 6 months. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, don't worry. Quo will port those over at no extra charge to you. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. FanDuel is also a sponsor of the show for this episode. The NFL season, it's here. Hopefully you guys are having fun with the NFL. And FanDuel is making sure you're ready to kick off with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, if you can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. I mean, that's great. 5 for $300, make it happen. You're going to love using the FanDuel app because it fits however you like to bet. You can do the player prop bets. You can do the same game parlays. You can even jump into the action as it's unfolding live. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. So is there some momentum building right now? Maybe trying to, and not specifically for Lincoln Riley, but I'm sure he's hearing the voices in the distance, that it might be time to give up play calling. You know my feelings on the matter. I've been very clear on this for a couple years, and I've laid low this season because his play calling has been really good. But it reared its ugly head against Notre Dame. Look, I'll say it again. If Coach Riley wants to be a great head coach, this is a really good one, he needs to delegate play calling. He just needs to. Joel Klatt, Colin Cowherd, they were debating it. They were talking about a walk-around coach. A walk-around coach, the way they were describing it, is the head coach that spends time going from personnel group to personnel group, acting like a head coach. And what that person does is they're evaluating, they're motivating, whatever needs to be done, but they have a hand in everything that's going on the team. They're a CEO. If he sees something that's wrong with the defense, as the head coach, you can get in there and say, hey, no, look, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Just reinforce. So let me say this for the 1 billionth time. Okay? I just want to be very, very, very clear, 3 times for emphasis. Lincoln Riley is one of the best offensive minds out there, college or pro. Okay. So that was 1 billionth and 1. Let me also say this, though. Lincoln Riley, he was brought in because of his play calling abilities, because of the way he can scheme things up. Scheme actually, I think, means more in the NFL than it does in college. And Joel Klatt agreed with that thought. Now, Colin Cowherd, you know how I feel about him. That dude just blows whichever way the wind is blowing that day. He came out with some pretty strong language. He was out there. He said, look, he's tired of watching USC get pushed around, and this is year 4. And then he took it a step further. He said, and Coach Lincoln Riley is not a culture builder. This is what they are as a program. His words, not mine. I'm not disagreeing that much with those words either, but I found it really interesting that Colin Cowherd, he just put it out there. Lincoln Riley is not a culture builder. And Joel Klatt, he let Colin get his piece in, and then he kind of chimed in. He says, as far as, USC getting pushed around in the trenches on the defensive line specifically, Joel says, look, it's getting better. And then he started to go into the, but they'll be even better next year, which you know how much I can't stand that whole, that line of thought. He's like, yeah, they're going to be better next year. It's getting better this year. They'll be better next year. They got that kid, Jakeem Stewart. Well, pretty much everyone on that defensive line in that room, they should be back next year. So even though those guys are coming back, assuming all of them are coming back, that means so is the same culture, right? USC is not void of talent right now on that side of the ball. They're not. And again, that's not even really what I want to focus on though right now. But because we were talking about culture being pushed around, and that's what everybody remembers, USC's defensive line just kind of getting ragdolled while Notre Dame ran for 300 yards. But Joel, he pulled a stat out of the air when he was, doing his part of the argument. And he said a college football play caller has not won a national championship since Jimbo Fisher did it at Florida State. And then, look, we all know how that story eventually ends when he got to College Station at Texas A&M. He had all the talent in the world, but it didn't happen. And he ended up getting, relieved of his duties. And so Joel said, and then before Jimbo Fisher, he was, maybe, I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but he said, I think the last guy before that was Tom Osborne at Nebraska, and that was back in the 90s. So Joel's point was, and the one that I've talked about so many times before, is that, CEOs win in college. It's not a coincidence that Ryan Day gave up play calling, and all of a sudden, he wins a national championship at Ohio State. It's not a coincidence. He got involved in all facets of that team, not just on offense. He hung out with the defense. He was hanging out with special teams. It makes a difference. So, when you have that walk around type of coach, you need that more in college than you need that in the NFL. Colin said you want that in the NFL. He talked about the successful walk around coaches in the NFL. Well, Joel's counterpoint was, you know what? I actually think you need that more in college. Scheme wins in the NFL, whereas you need more of a hands-on guy at the college level. So again, Ohio State's the most recent example, and it looks like they're on the path to getting back there again this year. So even Steve Sarkisian, former USC head coach, Texas head coach right now, he's getting asked the same question because his team looks just kind of middle of the road. And the offense right now looks really poorly structured. So he was asked after their most recent game, the game they won, but they scored, I think, one of the fewest points of the season. He was asked if he would consider giving up play calling. And he shook his head and said, no, this is why I was hired to be the head coach at Texas. Same thing with Lincoln Riley at USC. just as stubborn. He has no intention of giving it play calling, not this year. But I'm starting to sense a little bit of a groundswell right now. People are questioning Lincoln Riley. People are questioning Steve Sarkisian, saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe they should consider it." And then when you compare who's winning the championships and who isn't, yeah, one thing is clear. It's very clear. The shot callers, the guys who like to play calls, it doesn't matter. The guys who like to call plays, doesn't matter if you're an offense or defensive guy. It might be best to be the CEO, to be the head coach, and have good guys around you. Again, I've been talking about it, but now you're starting to hear it on a national scale. Now you're starting to hear about it on a national scale, not just about Lincoln Riley. Should Steve Sarkisian give it up? We'll see. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. I think it was a interesting talking point. And the fact that Colin and Joel were talking about it on their show. Hey, you know what? Let me bring it up over here. See what the Locked On USC everydayers listeners have to their thoughts on the matter. Hit me up on the comments section. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, I'm going to keep asking until you do it. Click that red subscribe button. Okay, smash that thumbs up. Tell everybody how much you love the show. Click the bell notification. That way you do not miss another episode. We got one more segment to go and talk a little bit about recruiting. USC's had a pretty good week of recruiting, both football and basketball. That's coming up next. Mazda crafts cars. Excuse me, there we go. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, and that's because Mazda has more IIHS Plus safety picks than awards than anyone else. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. And they have another really cool benefit anytime you buy a Mazda, because with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV standard, you can literally drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit of recruiting here in this segment before we close this show. Both football and basketball. Last week, I think it was on Thursday, and I was already on the airplane heading to Chicago for that game against Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. News broke that USC flipped a commit, from Cal, cornerback Jaden Crowder. He committed to the Bears in November 2024. And then he just recently took a recruiting visit to USC. In fact, it was the USC-Michigan game. And he had a nice conversation with, Coach Riley, the staff, Chad Bowden, everybody involved. And right after that, USC gave him an offer. Well, between the Michigan game and Thursday, he decided, I wanted to be a Trojan. And he flipped, made that commitment known. And what was interesting about Jaden Crowder flipping from Cal to USC, that was literally right after USC got a commitment from Jaquan Morris. And I told you about him. He's that JC defensive back from Mississippi. So it was just interesting timing to have a high school recruit say, you know what? USC's bringing in a guy with a little bit of playing experience. That doesn't bother me. I want to be a Trojan as well. This is what Jaden had to say when he made his commitment known. It was good, Jaden said of his visit. I had a conversation with Chad and Coach Reed. When we all got there, we ate the dinner. We ate the dinner they provided, and I had a conversation with them, and they ended up offering me. It was all good. And then I got to stay and watch the game. The atmosphere was great. It was a packed out stadium. Everybody was really nice. They're doing what they're supposed to with the fans. Then them rolling over Michigan, that was a big win because they showed out. The offense showed out. The defense showed out. So now you got three guys from Carson Palmer's squad down there at at Santa Margarita. So you have wide receiver Trent Mosley. You've got defensive end Simote Katoana. And now you've got cornerback Jaden Crowder. You got the Santa Margarita pipeline wide open. Carson Palmer, former USC Heisman Trophy winner. He's directing the show down there. Doesn't hurt, right? And USC might not even be done with the secondary in their 2026 class. They're also working on CJ Lavender, who is currently committed to Washington, but he's from Mater Dei High School. So we'll see what happens there. And as I mentioned, USC isn't just picking up recruits right now for football. The Muss Bus. Yeah, Eric Musselman picked up a couple of big time guys. Big time guys. A couple of rides. Commitments from Darius and Adonis Ratliff. Twins. 7-foot twins. Sound familiar? Excuse me. So, yeah, we've had the Mobley brothers, 7-footers. The 7-foot twins recently visited USC, and when they announced on Monday that they would commit on Wednesday this week, USC automatically, jumped to the forefront as the favorite. They were competing with Texas and Arkansas and Alabama. So these young men, they play their high school ball in New York, White Plains, New York. Last name Ratliff. You might recognize it. Their father, Theo, he played for 15 plus years in the NBA, mostly with the Atlanta Hawks. Really good defender. His kids, both of them are considered high 4 stars. And they've actually been jumping up in the recruiting. In fact, Muss didn't even offer them until September of this year. So they made it, whatever happened, Muss and his staff made a quick impression. It didn't hurt that Eric Musselman was on the Atlanta Hawks staff when Theo Ratliff was playing there. So, by the way, his dad, as I mentioned, good defensive player, 2-time all NBA defensive selection, and he actually led the league in blocks 3 times. You can never have too many rim protectors, and USC just picked up 2 of those guys. So again, as I mentioned, Eric Musselman was on the staff when Theo Ratliff was playing with Atlanta. Same thing when Coach Muss was coaching in the NBA. What's his name? Elijah Arenas' father. His dad, he was also coached up by Coach Muss. So hopefully the third time will be the charm for USC when they're getting players who have dads who played in the NBA. We all know about Bronny and LeBron. And I just mentioned Elijah and his father, Gilbert Arenas. I don't know why I couldn't get that name to pop in my head. And now you got the twins, Adonis and Darius. Their father, Theo, played in the NBA. So we'll see what happens. Both are considered, as I mentioned, high risers right now. Darius is a top 50 recruit in the class. And Adonis, again, he's moving up in the rankings. So I mentioned the Mobley brothers, Eric and Evan. Now you're bringing in a couple of 7-footers, Darius and Adonis. We'll see what happens. Like I said, you haven't had a whole lot of success when you had Bronny, again, medical related. Now you've got Elijah, again, medical related. Hopefully these 2 twins, Adonis and Darius, they can stay healthy and actually play for USC. Since I'm talking hoops right now, I should let everybody know, I'm going to be at GCU Saturday. I'm out here in Arizona. The Trojans will play their second exhibition game against Grand Canyon University. I am so looking forward to this game, even though it's an exhibition contest. If you have not seen it, Grand Canyon University has one of the best. In fact, I think it is the best team entrance in college basketball. Go to YouTube, check it out. Grand Canyon University team entrance. It is hype. And if USC brings just 20% of that back to the Galen Center, wow. I would love to see Galen Center as hyped up as GCU has with their crowd. The lights, the music, the crowd, into it. It is like a mass of humanity jumping up and down at one time. It's pretty impressive to watch. Excuse me. I'm going to see that just as much as I'm going to watch and get familiar with this USC men's basketball team, because their season is getting ready to tip off a couple weeks away. So this Saturday, if you're in the neighborhood, USC, Grand Canyon University, downtown Phoenix, I'll be there. By the way, once more, thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen. For your second listen, don't forget about the Locked On Big Ten show with Craig Sheeman. You can check that out on YouTube, wherever you want to get your Locked On show. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Locked On USC. That's what we do around here. I think I'm going to have Marvin with us. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.